Hey, what up, guys? We're back. Welcome to This Is My Moment podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Mitchell, and you know who I got rocking with me?
Yeet! What's good, guys? It's Money Mitch in the building, back for another episode of This Is My Moment.
Let's go to work.
There ain't no stopping it. This is my moment. Join the movement. We bringing people together, bringing positivity, making changes for the better.
Today, I got somebody on the other end of this camera that you've seen before because I was on her show. And I had such a good time, right? Like it was, I don't know what it was. It was just a thing. And I started following her on the Instagram and stuff, man. And it seems like I've been knowing her. But
Whole life.
Man, introduce yourself to the family.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I've been looking forward to this since you were on my podcast and since we met. And likewise, I've been following you and love everything you're doing, support any way I can. Just an incredible human being you are, and it's so great to meet the co-host now of this season. So really exciting things happening on this podcast. I love it. So excited to be here. My name is Rachel Oswalt. I'm the host of Your Story Doesn't End Here, the military mental health podcast, and Navy veteran. Spent 6.5 years serving in the Navy. And, experienced my own mental health challenges while I was serving, which really became the catalyst for a lot of the work that I do today to support the advocacy efforts and action in the military mental health space. Also a mom to a toddler and run a couple other businesses. And we keep pretty busy around here. Yeah.
Hey, just being the mom to a toddler is a full-time job. So I applaud everything you got going.
Yeah, she just turned 2, so she's crazy, but we love her.
I dig that. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
The last time we talked about Your Story Doesn't End Here, man, and you had me on there, and I was talking about my mental health stuff. Talk to me about what your movement is.
So when I first started Your Story Doesn't End Here, I would say a lot of my why was rooted in just anger from my experience. And I was like, I need people to know how bad mental health is in the military. People are dying, suicides are happening, people are struggling, people need to know. And my thought process was if the civilian population knew how bad mental health could be in the military, that they'd be outraged. Well, it didn't really quite go out like that. It didn't lay out like that with the podcast. Now, awareness has increased quite a bit with the podcast. It's growing, and that's great. But what I found is that after a year doing the podcast, kind of reevaluating, doing a lot of reflecting in my own healing, I added something to my mission of changing the culture of mental health in the military, because I realized that policy, yes, a lot of civilians, if they hear, oh, something's wrong, well, what do we do to take action? Well, most people are going to say, let's push for policy changes. Yeah, policy's great. But anyone that served in the military knows that most of the policies that come down the pipeline, it becomes a checklist, right? Like we put people in a room, half of them are falling asleep, no one's really listening, and they're just there to check the box, right? So how do we change the culture within the military and realistically the DoD organizations in general so that it actually makes a difference? And so I started changing my focus to the culture. And I think that has created this incredible domino effect of looking at not only preventative measures to help prevent poor mental health in the veteran community, in the active duty community in the first place, but it also just creates a different attitude towards the movement in general. We're no longer rooted in this angry, I want people to know how bad it is because it's bad. Yes, it can get really bad, but what can we do and what solutions can we create? And then we're very much solution based right now. So still very much focusing on advocacy, but also very much focusing on solutions and tangible actions that we can take within the military and veteran community to make mental health better.
That's solid.
Ms. Rachel, do you work with any other partnering groups or individuals with this?
So right now, I am working with a few individuals with the San Diego Veterans Coalition, and what they have created is something called the CMVR model, stands for Center for Military and Veterans Reintegration. And they don't sponsor the podcast or anything like that. This is more like an individual thing that I've taken on in my community to bring some reintegration and transition initiatives. And so I kind of touched briefly on the preventative measures. And to me, this is a huge preventative measure to prevent suicides, homelessness, joblessness, and the veteran community. You know, we talk about the 22 a day, the numbers changing all the time. And so many people, they take this reactive measure, which is needed. But I think the big struggle within the veteran community specifically is how do we prevent these suicides? Like, how do we stop them from happening? And so if we look at reintegrating and the transition process from active duty to veteran in the first place, that is a huge area that's going to prevent quite a few suicides. And then also a number of issues in the veteran community. And so that's a movement that hopefully will be spread nationwide here within the next couple of years. But I have been working very closely with some members from the San Diego Veterans Coalition, and then a few other members in Southern California to get that initiative going in Whidbey Island, Washington, where I'm located.
And you don't know this, but you saw me when I was coming home, and it's emotionally damaging.
And it's taxing on the people around you too. And I feel like that's a part of it that a lot of people don't get to experience or hear from, but when you're hearing it from the first person. But for the people around him, for me, bro, when you would call me, I was in college when he was deployed, and he would call me and tell me stories. And not to be that guy, but bro, you would ruin my day sometimes. I'm like, bro, are you like, my boy is out there, like, just out there, like this is like my brother. Like, so it's like, it would throw me off, like, to know that some of the stuff that you were going through and having to deal with, and it was kind of like you just had to get through it. Like, you just had to, like, power through.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, I don't know if it's, if that's in every branch and every situation, but some of those stories, I just be like, there's no way that you should just have to get through this. Like, you know what I mean? There should be outlets. There should be some type of help.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. And a lot of times, what you said, and I think you'll agree with me, is that push through mentality, right? You just want to push through it, and the military and those things. At the time when I retired, it wasn't all these things, and what Rachel is doing is needed.
Yeah,
because push through doesn't work, because you can't get rid of that, and now all of a sudden it's taking a toll on you. And how can I be a better father, a better wife, a better husband, a better brother, a better friend if I can't even be better with myself?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And what you're doing is super commendable. And I wanted to get you on here and talk about that, because that is one thing that I think everyone needs to know. No matter if you did 4 or if you did 34, at the end of the day, you need an outlet and you need people there to support you. Hey, great on you for that. And I've been watching you go to these speaking engagements, and you were at a couple of events. I couldn't hear what you were talking about, so I want to just pull your ear on it. What were you talking about on some of these engagements? When it was a panel, it was like 4 of you guys on a panel, and you was just in there chopping it up. What were you speaking about?
Yeah, so I did a local event in my community to kind of kick off this veterans reintegration and transition movement in the community. And the event itself was called Save a Life. And so Your Story Doesn't End Here actually hosted that event in the community. And the panel itself had a couple different people on it to speak to different perspectives of veterans issues. So one of the people on the panel was local to the community. He has a mental health clinic himself. He's also in city council, so he's able to speak to the local perspective. Another person has a nonprofit, Operation Military Family, so he was able to speak towards a family perspective, but he also does a lot of other speaking engagements too. And so he brought a unique perspective there. Another one on the panel, she works with the VA, and she was very instrumental in the ETS sponsorship program. And the ETS sponsorship program connects transitioning service members with a member of the community who doesn't necessarily have to be affiliated with the military in any way, but just the military has a sponsorship program to help people when they get into their commands, to help walk them through the ropes, And so it's kind of the opposite with, reintegrating back into a community. Some people move to communities they know nothing about. And so by having a sponsor to just really help them through that process, that's one of the ideas of the ETS sponsorship program, which is a VA program. So she was able to bring some perspectives from that and her own experiences. We also had the film director of Stranger at Home. Stranger at Home was a documentary about military mental health that recently released on PBS nationally on Veterans Day. And so she was able to speak to a couple things there as well. And then I was mainly curating that panel. But we also had a few members of the film that came in virtually on Zoom. And so a lot of people that weren't at the event weren't able to see that. But some of the people that were in that film, Stephen Elliott, he was part of the Pat Tillman friendly fire incident from the early 2000s. So he experienced a lot of mental health challenges with that. So he's in that documentary Stranger at Home. And then Dr. Mark Russell was a whistleblower in the Navy about mental health conditions. And interestingly enough, I'd actually never heard of him being a whistleblower. I would have thought that would be something that was like in the news, but never heard of him until I found him through that film Stranger at Home. But he was also able to bring this unique perspective as someone who worked in the mental health clinics, had gone on deployments during the Iraq invasion era of the military, and was able to bring a perspective about that. And so it was a very, very incredible panel that we had up there of people that were able to speak to several different perspectives and viewpoints. And then I was able to share a few things myself as well. I think we could have probably gone all day speaking about different things about military mental health from all the different viewpoints there. But the idea was to not only answer questions for members of the community, but to also bring that perspective and give the opportunity for people to kind of get an idea of why this stuff matters so much. Because we're not just hearing it now from one person, we're hearing from several people. Okay, well, these are the issues in our community. Now, these are the issues throughout the military. And it's not just one person coming in and complaining and saying, hey, I had a really bad experience. Because I think oftentimes that's what it can sound like to maybe someone who's in a leadership position. If they just hear one person that's just constantly complaining, it's like, is it your problem or is it an actual problem? And so when we bring panels or different people to the table, now it creates this idea of, well, this is a lot deeper than just one person's perspective. But yeah, I've had a lot of other opportunities to just share my story and just talk about military mental health. And that's been one of my goals for this upcoming year, is to just expand my presence in speaking platforms and just to be able to have the opportunity to spread awareness and spread actionable things that people can take as tools to use in their own life.
I dig that.
And it's super needed, and we applaud you for your efforts. For real.
Thank you.
What has been one of the most challenging things you've had to face while getting this movement going? Because it's funny, since the last time we talked, I started going to VA mental health, and I'm in a one-on-one peer group now. Because some days, man, it's worse. You know what I mean? And some days is deal wittable, if that's a word.
It's not, but we'll take it.
I think that these programs are needed because without an outlet, we can't be the best versions of ourselves, and we can't really be, and I hate to say this, you can't really be good people in society, because after a while you start to see things and hear things and move a certain way mentally that you really can't even be effective, right? And I was talking with this guy the other day. I'm sitting in the VA clinic down here in San Antonio, and he comes in, right? And he's an old Army guy, right? He got injured, whatever, and he was saying that in order for him to keep his disability, he had to go to these counseling classes, but the counseling classes made him unemployable, but they only pay him a certain amount, right? So he's stipend out at a certain amount, and if he makes more than like $1,200,
then it disqualifies him out of the program,
out of his VA. So now that mental attack that he had is exacerbated because now he's financially in trouble because he doesn't want to lose his benefits. But he needs the care and the health, but he needs to work. So now that mental trouble that he's had
is compounded by real life, real time issues.
Money.
Yeah.
So My question to you is, what has been one of the most significant challenges you've had so far?
I would say that the significant challenge has been myself and my mindset about things, because I think I tend to overthink quite a few things. And I would say the hardest thing about transitioning from a military mindset to a civilian mindset, especially an entrepreneurial mindset, or even the mindset of taking on a big community project, it seems very overwhelming, and it can be overwhelming a lot of times. And so a lot of areas where I've been stagnant in my life, in really all areas, has just been because I get in my own head about things, and I tend to be that person that likes to take on everything instead of reaching out for support or disseminating different tasks to people. And so that's actually been one of my focuses for this year and moving forward beyond this year, is where are the areas in my life where I can spread out some of these tasks to other people who can help me and take the load off, but then also letting go of some of that control that I've clung on to for so long, that I think has been really holding me back in a lot of areas of my life. So as I guess basic as it sounds, I have been my own biggest challenge throughout really this entire process.
But I have a question for you. I have never been in the military or anything like that, but I ask this question to everybody who has been in some branch of the military. When you look back on your time in the military, do you enjoy it, or did you enjoy it?
So that's kind of a twofold answer. I think when I look back on my time in the military, there are things that I definitely miss. There were some incredible people that I served with. There were some really cool things that I got the opportunity to do, and places that I got the opportunity to see that I never would have had I not been in the military. When I was in the military, I think I missed out on a lot of that enjoyment because of my mindset when I was in. I very much had this like sour mentality towards my leaders, towards people that wronged me. And I think I let a lot of that ruin the beautiful experience that I could have had. And so I think in reflection, yes, some really cool things, some really cool people, some really cool opportunities. And had I had a different mindset during that time, I think that during the time that I was in, I probably would have said, oh yeah, I enjoyed it a lot more. But um we only know what we know, and it's different looking back on an experience than it is living through an experience, because the mental overload of being in an experience, I don't know that it would have been possible for me at that time to really fully enjoy everything, because I was dealing with so much mentally, and I didn't have the tools to really be able to handle it all. So yes and no.
Gotcha.
How is your support circle right now? I talk about this all the time, and my support circle consists of about 6 or 7 people, right? And these are my people. He's one of them that I can go to with good, bad, ugly, whatever, right? And I think that for me, having that person or persons there for you is huge. How do you feel about having a support function, a support system?
So it's interesting you bring this up. I started doing this. It's a weekly Saturday, I guess support circle is what you could call it. And it's called Weekly Muster. And it's kind of part of that CMVR model that I talked about earlier. And with this weekly muster, every Saturday for an hour, a group of us veterans get together on Zoom, and we have a check-in, and we say a number, I think it's 1 to 10 of where we are at emotionally. And what I found really cool about that is that there is that support. If I come in and I say, I think the very first one I went to was in the middle of the holidays, things were really overwhelming, and I was like, listen, like I'm sitting at a pretty low number. And I had several people reach out, and they're like, hey, here's my number. We can chat more after if you'd like. This is my email address. Let me know if you want. And it wasn't like a pushy, like you have to talk to me, and it wasn't uncomfortable. But I think for me, what I love about support circles is that we feel less alone in the fact that I was hearing other people that were also struggling. It wasn't just me showing up and saying I'm struggling and everyone else is doing fantastic. Don't get me wrong, there were people that were doing fantastic, but there were also other people that were like, you know what, it's been a really rough week. This happened, and this happened. And I think as humans, it helps to feel less alone, because oftentimes, like I said earlier, if we get in our own heads, which I often do, it can be easy to feel like, oh, it's just me and I'm an anomaly going through this by myself. And I will be that person that will just recluse and keep things bottled up. And so knowing that I have something to go to every Saturday where I can comfortably tell this group of people, like, hey, I'm struggling this week, this happened, and knowing that I have other people within that support circle that I can reach out to should I need to, it's really, really helpful for me. And then I also think I want to add to that, having a support circle that is relatable is really important too. So veterans with veterans, a lot of people that are dealing with like alcoholism will go to like an Alcoholics Anonymous because these people can relate. It's not like you're talking to someone that has no idea what you've been through.
Right. Kind of builds the sense of community.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm all for support circles, whether that's friends, a professional group, whatever someone's tribe is. Like I tell people all the time, find your tribe.
That is huge. So with all this going on, right, and all the moves you're trying to make, right, on those days that you're feeling unmotivated, those days that you're down, what is building you back up? What's building Rachel back up? What is motivating you to put that other foot back in front of that other foot?
Yeah, I think so. For me, it comes down to something that's bigger than me. There are some days, don't get me wrong, that I just need to take the day. Like I just need to do something that has nothing to do with what I'm working on and just get my mind off of things, because sometimes I go, 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 and I just need that break and to turn my brain off and spend time with the family or watch something on Netflix or something that has nothing to do with all the other things I have going on. I would say to an extent, I'm still working on this because I'm still trying to figure out like what is the best system that's going to work for me to where I'm not like overloaded, but I'm also still taking that time for me. But when it comes to like the podcast, for example, there are days that I get up and I'm like, I don't want to do a podcast interview today. But there are people that have reached out to me that have said, hey, this episode really impacted me. Or a review on the podcast that said, this is incredible, this really helped me. Or like even looking at like the Spotify Wrapped and seeing like, wow, people actually listen to the podcast and are impacted by this. And like, to me, those little things, like I know people don't necessarily think that reaching out to someone who has a podcast and saying, hey, thank you might mean a lot, but it does. I think for those of us, and you might agree with this too, for those of us that have podcasts, like knowing that someone is impacted, even if it's just one person, it makes the biggest difference on those unmotivated days. And so I would say there's several times in my mind, I'm like, man, I should take a break. Like, I don't know if people take breaks, but then I'm like, no, there's people that need this. And so for the things that I consistently do, on the unmotivated days, it always has to be something bigger than just me. And that's what really keeps me going.
Dig that. I've been watching you. And I seen that you started this new exercise thing, right? Yeah. So my question is work-life balance. I've had cats that don't subscribe to it. You just grind it out. I've had some people that put their family before their careers, things of that nature. What is your work-life balance like?
Yeah, so what's interesting to me is when I first started the world of entrepreneurship and kind of doing my own thing, being in charge of my own schedule, I was trying so hard to model what everyone else was doing. And so I would go on YouTube, I'd find like, oh, this successful millionaire entrepreneur, well, they get up at 3:00 in the morning. They have a 3-hour morning routine. They go about their day. They have time blocks. This is great. I tried for probably a year to try all these different routines that other people were doing. And then I had to take a step back and be like, well, wait a minute. This is a single male that does not have children that has the time to do this, right? Like I have a toddler who is at home with me all day long. I am running multiple businesses. I have a podcast. I have community initiatives. I mean, I can't compare my life to someone who doesn't even relate to me in the slightest bit. And so for me, I've realized that my work-life balance has to look different than someone else's work-life balance, and that's okay. Something that I was talking about the other day with someone is I wanted to do the 75 hard challenge, for example, and I was like, I don't know that I can fit that in my life right now because I think that it would end up overwhelming me too much. I just have so much going on, but what can I do to still take care of my body and to still work on that mental discipline without, overwhelming myself? And so a lot of that balance lately for me has looked like saying no to things that maybe other people want me to do, but I just am like, it doesn't fit in the cards. I have too much going on. Reevaluating my goals and what specific actionables I need to take. And so I understand where time is being wasted and where I need to spend my time, but then also understanding that each day is going to look a little different than the last day. That's okay. I don't have to have this hour-long morning routine every day to be successful, but as long as I am moving the needle every single day in some kind of way, which was really, really hard to get past mentally for me, because I wanted so hard to have the like time blocked perfect day to where I could look back at the end of the day and be like, oh, I accomplished this, this, and this, and this. But a lot of it has been, understanding that like, well, the work-life balance in the day, it's going to look a little bit different every single day. Being a mom that is accomplishing something, it's not just like, a mundane task like that. That alone is huge, and that takes up a decent chunk of my day some days. So work-life balance looks a little different every day. But for me, it's just, fitting things in where I can and just focusing on making sure that I am doing things that are moving the needle forward for me.
Last question, then we're going to have some fun. What can you tell an individual that's going through the same thing that you went through, but don't have the motivation that you have, that don't have the drive that you have, that don't have the circle that you have? What can you tell someone?
I would say take it one step at a time, because I think where I found myself the most stagnant was that I had so much overwhelm going on in my head that I just didn't take any action at all. And so one step at a time, find something that maybe will work, maybe won't work. It's a lot of trial and error, realistically. That's just what life is in general. It's just a series of trials and errors until we find out what works for us. One thing that might work in one season of life might not work in the next season of life, and that's okay too. But I would say just start with little baby steps, take one thing at a time, see if that works, give it time to see if it works. Which sometimes can be, 90 days. I mean, try something for one day, it doesn't work. We don't know that it actually didn't work. It might have just been a bad day. But I think the biggest thing I could tell someone that's been through what I've been through is to just one step at a time, little tasks at a time, and those will truly add up to the big picture accomplishments.
Dig that. Dig that.
Well, quick question. This is off the script, but I know mental health is like super huge just in general right now, not just with vets. But do you guys only work with vets, or do you take on anyone?
So I know people that take on other demographics outside of the veteran demographic. And so if someone reached out to me and was like, hey, I need help, point me in the right direction, I will connect them with someone. What I'm doing, I focus mainly on the active duty veteran reservist population because there's so many people in that population. And I've had spouses before that are like, hey, the spouse demographic alone needs so much help. And I'm like, man, I would love to take that on too. But I can't relate. We talked about the community and relatability. Right. And I think that's really important. I think that would be a great niche for someone that is a spouse that wanted to take that on. But I would say I mainly focus on the veteran active duty reservist population because something about veterans that can just relate to other veterans. I don't know what it is, but that relatability is always there, whether we serve combat, non-combat, early 2000s, more recent military. There's just that connection there.
Yeah.
You're sure right about that. All right. I talked to you earlier. Told you at the end of the show we play a little game.
Yeah,
You ready to have some fun?
I'm ready.
Let's get it cracking. Pick one. Active duty or civilian?
We'll go active duty.
That's a surprise.
I said, hey.
I didn't think that was gonna go that way.
True that. Here we go. Next question. You only get one podcast that you've hosted or been on. Which one you keeping?
That I've hosted. My podcast.
Or been on.
my podcast. Your story doesn't end here.
That's it?
Yeah.
Too easy. Last question. I give you the phrase, "This is my moment." What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
I guess I'm very visual, so I just picture like a Wonder Woman, you know, like empowered, like yes, like I get this like image in my head of like a empowered, like a Wonder Woman.
I'll accept that. Because I feel like a Superman. This is my moment. Kind of feels like
you superhero.
Yeah. Conquering everything. Nice. Well, we appreciate your time, Miss Rachel. This has been super insightful, especially for me who's not been a vet, but have been on this side of it and hearing all of his crazy stories. And oh, man. But this has been wonderful, wonderful, wonderful information, and you are doing God's work for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Also, for the questions, I just want to let you know I answered with the first thing that came to mind. So I didn't know where we were going with that.
You cool with it. You cool with it. Yeah. Rachel, we are done. Thank you. Don't move. I'm going to close out the show.
Sounds good.
Guys, here's the deal. She said it, and it stuck with me. I had to write it down. Find you a support system and a support circle that's relatable. People that think like you and move like you are always going to be able to help you move and grow. And that's, man, I've never thought about that. So thank you for bringing that to my attention. And that is huge. A relatable circle and help you move forward. And at the end of the day, go get it.
Join the movement, we bringing people together, bringing positivity, making changes for the better. Cause it's all about growth, all about success. We wanna see you rise, wanna see you at your best. Ay.